What if the internet wasn't invented in our lifetime but existed long before, woven into the very fabric of ancient myths? Picture this: a vast, invisible network stretching across the heavens and the earth, where gods sent messages through lightning bolts, spirits whispered through the wind, and oracles decoded divine signals like celestial Wi-Fi. This wasn't just fantasy, it was the mythic internet of the ancients, a system of communication so intricate, so awe-inspiring, that it connected entire realms beyond human understanding. Today, we're diving deep into the forgotten ways these extraordinary beings, gods, spirits, and even mortals, bridge the gaps between worlds, sharing knowledge, warnings, and prophecies through methods that would make even modern technology blush. Think about how reliant we are on the internet today, how it shapes our lives, our connections, even our understanding of the world. Now imagine a time when the gods had their own version, a cosmic web of symbols, dreams, and natural phenomena. The thunder wasn't just noise, it was Zeus sending a message. The rustling leaves weren't random, they carried the voices of forest spirits and the stars. They weren't just lights in the sky, but a celestial Morse code, spelling out destinies for those who knew how to read them. Across cultures, from the Norse to the Egyptians, from the Maya to the Greeks, every civilization had its own mythic operating system, its own way of transmitting the divine. So why does this matter now? Because these stories aren't just relics of the past, they're windows into how humanity has always sought to connect, to understand forces greater than ourselves. Over this journey, we'll uncover 23 astonishing methods of mythic communication, from dream telepathy to sacred smoke signals, from talking trees to mirror portals. Some will feel eerily familiar, like ancient prototypes of our own tech. Others will defy logic, reminding us that the line between myth and mystery is thinner than we think. So settle in, because we're about to reboot history and log into the oldest network of all, the mythic internet that once bound heaven and earth together. In the grand cosmic network of ancient Greece, the gods didn't just shout their messages across the heavens. They relied on a pair of divine couriers, swift and unstoppable, to bridge the gap between the immortal and the mortal. Enter Hermes, the quick-footed trickster, darting between realms on winged sandals, his caduceus staff crackling with divine authority. Then there's Iris, goddess of the rainbow, streaking across the sky in a blaze of color, her very form a living signal flare from Olympus. These weren't just messengers, they were the mythic equivalent of an encrypted broadband connection, delivering urgent updates straight from the gods' inboxes. Hermes, with his boundless energy and cunning, was the ultimate multitasker of the divine world. One moment he'd be whispering Zeus's latest decree into a king's ear, the next he'd be guiding souls to the underworld like a celestial GPS. His sandals weren't just for show, they let him move at the speed of thought, slipping through the fabric of reality like a divine email shooting through fiber optic cables. And just like modern data packets, his messages were often layered with hidden meaning, wrapped in riddles or dreams that only the intended recipient could decode. But where Hermes was the stealthy hacker of the pantheon, Iris was the dazzling public broadcast. When she arced across the sky, everyone below knew something big was about to drop, a declaration of war, a god's fury, or sometimes just a heavenly memo about next week's thunderstorm schedule. Her rainbows weren't just pretty, they were cosmic hyperlinks, shimmering portals that let her step from Olympus to Earth in the blink of an eye. Imagine getting a DM from the gods, but instead of a ding on your phone, the entire sky lights up with technicolor brilliance. What's fascinating is how these two couriers reflect the duality of ancient communication. Hermes operated in the shadows, his work subtle and often misunderstood, much like encrypted data traveling unseen through cables. Iris, though, she was the ultimate viral post, her messages impossible to ignore, painting the heavens with divine headlines. Together, they formed a perfect system, one for secrets, one for spectacle. And just like today's internet, reliability was everything. Forget a message, delay a delivery, and entire kingdoms could fall. No pressure, right? Think about how much trust the ancients placed in these mythic mail carriers. A single misdelivered prophecy could spark a war or doom a hero. That's a far cry from our message failed to send notifications. And yet, in both cases, the underlying truth remains. Communication isn't just about the words, it's about the messengers who make sure they land. Whether it's winged sandals or wireless signals, the real magic lies in the connection. Deep beneath the slopes of Mount Parnassus, where the earth itself seemed to breathe, stood the ancient world's most powerful server, the Oracle of Delphi. This wasn't just a temple, it was a sacred terminal where mortals could directly interface with Apollo's divine database. Picture a priestess, the Pythia, seated above a gaping chasm, her body racked with tremors as otherworldly vapors rose from the cracks in the earth. These weren't ordinary fumes. Legend claimed they carried the voice of Apollo himself, turning the Pythia into a living decoder of celestial data. Kings and peasants alike would line up for days, clutching their petitions like ancient search queries, desperate to extract meaning from her fragmented, poetic replies. The process was anything but simple. Before approaching the Pythia, seekers underwent rigorous purification rituals, bathing in holy springs, offering sacrifices, even fasting for days. Think of it as the ancient equivalent of clearing your browser cache before submitting an important request. Only then would they be led into the temple's shadowy inner sanctum, where the Pythia, now deep in trance, would channel Apollo's responses. Her answers came in riddles, metaphors, sometimes even backward prophecies, like a glitchy algorithm spitting out encrypted results. Know thyself, the temple walls warned, a reminder that even divine search results required human interpretation. What's astonishing is how much global infrastructure relied on this single node. When Athens faced Persian invasion, they didn't just consult the oracle, they built their entire military strategy around her cryptic reply about wooden walls. Croesus, the wealthy king of Lydia, famously tested the oracle's accuracy by asking what he'd be doing on a specific day, then staged an elaborate lamb and tortoise stew to confirm her prediction. States would send ambassadors with lists of questions written on lead tablets, their envoys waiting weeks for what we'd now call a divine API call. And just like modern servers, Delphi had peak hours. The temple only operated 9 days a year, creating a bottleneck of desperate petitioners. But here's where the mythic internet analogy gets eerie. The oracle didn't just answer questions, she shaped reality. Her prophecies became self-fulfilling loops, with humans acting as unwitting processors of her code. When Oedipus heard he'd kill his father, every step he took to avoid that fate only brought him closer to fulfilling it. The Pythia's words were like a cosmic exe file. Once executed, they couldn't be undone. Even the temple's physical collapse in earthquakes and fires carried symbolic weight, as if the gods were rebooting the system. Yet for all its mystique, Delphi's brilliance lay in its imperfections. Unlike today's sterile Google searches, the oracle forced seekers to engage critically with the answers. A vague prophecy about a great empire falling could refer to Rome or the questioner's rival. It demanded human intuition to pass. In that sense, the Pythia wasn't just a search engine. She was the original chatbot, designed not for efficiency but for revelation. And perhaps that's the most striking difference between then and now. Where we expect instant, literal answers, the ancients understood that true wisdom often comes wrapped in enigma, demanding not just retrieval but reflection. Some of the most urgent messages from the gods didn't arrive with thunder or rainbows. They slipped into mortal minds under the cover of night, wrapped in the enigmatic language of dreams. The ancients saw sleep not as downtime, but as a sacred bandwidth where deities like Zeus and Asclepius could transmit visions directly into human consciousness. This was oneromancy, the divine art of dream communication, and it functioned like a celestial direct messaging system, delivering everything from battlefield strategies to medical prescriptions while the world slept. Take Agamemnon, the legendary Greek king, who received a war-altering dream on the eve of battle. As he drifted off, Zeus himself dispatched a phantom, a crafted dream avatar bearing false news of imminent victory. This wasn't just a pep talk, it was psychological warfare orchestrated by the gods, a push notification designed to manipulate history's course. The irony. Agamemnon's generals immediately questioned the dream's validity, sparking debates about divine spam versus genuine prophecy. Even then, mortals struggled to filter signal from noise in their mythic inboxes. Meanwhile, Asclepius, the god of medicine, ran an entire healing network through dreams. Pilgrims flocked to his temples, not with prescriptions, but with prayers for incubation dreams, overnight visions where the god would diagnose ailments and reveal cures. Patients slept on sacred skins, their bodies positioned to receive these nocturnal downloads. Upon waking, priests acted as tech support, interpreting the symbolism. A serpent coiled around a limb might indicate needed surgery, while a golden chalice could prescribe herbal tonics. It was telehealth millennia before Wi-Fi, with the subconscious as the interface. The parallels to modern tech are startling. Like app notifications that vibrate silently on your locked screen, divine dreams arrived unannounced but demanded immediate attention. Joseph's biblical visions of looming famine triggered grain stockpiling, an ancient version of disaster alerts. Babylonian kings recorded dream omens on clay tablets, creating the first dream logs. Even the mechanism feels familiar. Just as algorithms tailor ads to your search history, gods customized dreams to the dreamer's psyche. A shepherd might see talking flocks. A sailor, storm warning tides, personalized content delivered straight to the mind's backend. Yet there's a crucial difference. Today's notifications vanish with a swipe, but mythic dreams clung like fire to parchment. Cassandra's prophetic nightmares tormented her waking hours, unshakable as corrupted files. Oedipus's fate was sealed by a dream his parents couldn't unsee. No delete button, no undo. This was communication without mute settings, where every ping carried existential weight. Perhaps that's why temples employed dream interpreters, the original IT specialists, to decrypt these volatile data packets before they crashed mortal lives. What's haunting is how this system mirrors our own dependency on digital messages. We may have swapped Morpheus's dream realm for glowing screens, but the core remains. Humans still crave direct channels to forces beyond themselves, still jump at midnight alerts, still struggle to separate wisdom from noise. The medium changes, the yearning doesn't. So tonight, when you close your eyes, remember, your ancestors believed the dark behind your eyelids wasn't empty. It was a cosmic loading screen, buffering messages from realms unseen. High above the battlefields of Norse mythology, where icy winds carried secrets between worlds, Odin's ravens Huginn and Muninn soared like living satellites, silent, swift, and all-seeing. Every dawn, the All-Father would release these obsidian-feathered scouts to surveil the 9 realms, gathering intelligence with precision that would make modern surveillance tech blush. Think of them as mythic data drones, their wings cutting through the sky like encrypted signals, their sharp eyes capturing every whisper of war, every tremor of betrayal. By dusk, they'd return to Odin's shoulders, not with raw footage, but with distilled reports condensed into whispers only he could decode. This wasn't just bird watching, it was divine intelligence gathering on a cosmic scale. Meanwhile, in the sun-drenched temples of Athens, another winged courier carried wisdom instead of secrets, Athena's owl. With eyes that pierced through darkness, this bird wasn't merely a symbol. It was the original encrypted Wi-Fi signal, delivering strategic insights straight to generals and philosophers. When an owl glided over the Acropolis, it wasn't just a lucky omen. It was as if Athena herself had pressed send on a classified memo. The owl's nocturnal nature added another layer, like a divine VPN, operating under cover of night to avoid interception. Even today, we still associate owls with wisdom, little realizing we're echoing an ancient belief in avian broadband. Now shift east to the vibrant myths of Hinduism, where Garuda, the golden eagle, streaked across the heavens like a blazing comet, faster than thought itself. This wasn't just a bird, it was the ultimate celestial courier, shuttling messages between gods and mortals with the urgency of a priority inbox. Garuda's wings didn't just beat the air, they bent time, making him the mythic equivalent of fiber optic cables carrying terabits of divine data. When he descended, even the wind held its breath, knowing his deliveries could rewrite destinies. What's fascinating is how these creatures weren't just passive carriers, they were active participants in the communication loop. Huginn and Muninn didn't just report, they analyzed, filtering noise from signal before delivering their findings. Athena's owl didn't blindly relay information, it seemed to understand the weight of every message it carried. And Garuda, he'd negotiate with demons and outmaneuver storms to ensure his payloads arrived intact. These were more than messengers, they were feathery algorithms programmed by the gods to optimize celestial data flow. The parallels to modern tech are almost unsettling. Odin's ravens foreshadowed our surveillance drones, Athena's owl predicted encrypted email, and Garuda's speed mirrors our obsession with low-latency connections. But here's the twist, where our systems rely on cold, lifeless hardware, the ancients entrusted their most critical communications to beings with agency, creatures that could adapt, interpret, even disobey. A raven might omit a detail, an owl could arrive late, Garuda might negotiate terms. Their messages weren't sterile data packets, they were living, breathing dispatches shaped by the messengers themselves. Perhaps that's why these myths still resonate. In a world drowning in robotic notifications, we long for communication with weight, for couriers who understand the messages they carry. When a raven lands on your windowsill or an owl calls in the night, it's hard not to wonder, what if they're not just birds? What if, for one fleeting moment, the mythic internet flickers back to life and the old channels open again? After all, the wires and waves we've built are impressive, but they'll never match the magic of winged whispers in the dark. Beneath the gnarled roots of Yggdrasil, the great world tree of Norse mythology, the cosmos pulsed with whispered secrets. This wasn't just a tree, it was the original fiber optic network, its tangled roots stretching into the 9 realms like subterranean cables, humming with divine data. When Odin hung himself from its branches to gain wisdom, he wasn't just suffering, he was plugging directly into the mythic dark web, downloading forbidden knowledge through bark and sap. The Norns, those shadowy weavers of fate, carved runes into its roots, their inscriptions rippling through the tree's vast system like coded updates. Every rustling leaf carried echoes from distant realms, the clang of dwarven forges in Nidavellir, the sighing dead in Helheim, as if Yggdrasil's very fibers were threaded with celestial bandwidth. Meanwhile, across the misty forests of Celtic lands, druids performed their own version of arboreal networking. They didn't just worship oaks, they communed with them, pressing ears against ancient trunks to decode messages streaming through the wood's grain. These sacred groves were nature's live stream, broadcasting prophecies through creaking branches and shuddering leaves. A sudden gust might carry warnings of famine. A peculiar knot in the bark could reveal the name of a future king. The druids even had a ritual for boosting the signal, pouring libations of sacred water into the roots to refresh the connection, much like we reboot routers today. And when they needed to send rather than receive, they'd etch ogham script into living wood, trusting the tree's vascular system to relay their petitions to the spirit world. Far to the east, the kalpavriksha trees of Hindu myths took plant-based communication to dazzling heights. These weren't passive receivers but interactive voice assistants long before Alexa existed. A traveler exhausted from pilgrimage could stand beneath their boughs and simply speak a wish aloud: food, shelter, even celestial knowledge, and the tree would manifest it instantly, as if responding to a cosmic wake word. The mechanism wasn't magic in the vague sense. Ancient texts describe it as a precise protocol. The right mantra voice command, proper intent authentication, and positional alignment, think Mythic Bluetooth pairing. Fail any step and the tree remained silent, a divine two-factor authentication system with roots instead of servers. What unites these arboreal networks is their living infrastructure. Unlike stone temples or metal devices, trees grow, change, and occasionally go offline, dropping leaves in winter, shedding bark, or falling in storms. The Norse feared Ragnarok would begin when Yggdrasil shuddered. The Druids interpreted blighted oaks as corrupted files in nature's mainframe. Yet this fragility made the system profoundly organic. A message relayed through roots might arrive slightly altered, filtered through the tree's own consciousness. A prophecy streaming through branches could warp like a game of telephone, its meaning evolving with each new leaf it touched. The irony: we've spent centuries building towers and satellites to replicate what myths claimed trees already did: connect everything. Modern science confirms trees communicate via fungal networks, sharing nutrients and warnings through the wood wide web. The ancients would nod knowingly. They'd been calling this system Yggdrasil for millennia. So next time you walk past an old tree, pause. That rough bark might just be shielding ancient servers, its roots humming with signals we've forgotten how to hear. Before tweets could fly through the air or texts could ping across continents, the ancients harnessed nature's raw forces as their messaging apps. No devices required, just the primal elements themselves. Take Zephyrus, the Greek god of the west wind, who didn't merely rustle leaves but served as Aphrodite's personal courier, scattering rose petals infused with love notes across land and sea. When a sudden breeze carried the scent of blossoms to a sailor far from home, that wasn't chance, it was divine snail mail, a scented DM from the goddess of desire herself. Zephyrus didn't need an inbox. His very breath was the network, encoding emotions into gusts that could make hearts race or sighs deepen with a single exhale. Meanwhile, in the flickering fire pits of Vedic rituals, another elemental courier crackled to life: Agni, the two-faced god of flame. Every spark rising from a Hindu sacrifice carried more than heat. It ferried whispered hymns and offerings straight to the god's doorstep. Imagine a sacred Google Translate for prayers, where fire didn't just burn but transmuted mortal words into celestial code, smoke curling into the heavens like an ancient DSL connection. Rigvedic hymns describe Agni's tongues as messengers with golden wings, licking upward to deliver data packets of devotion. A well-tended flame meant clear reception, a neglected one. Divine spam folder. Now dive beneath the churning waterfalls of Maori legend, where Taniwa serpentine water spirits wove through currents like living fiber optics. These weren't mere monsters but aquatic routers, relaying warnings and wisdom through the river's pulse. A sudden eddy might carry a chief's prophetic dream downstream. A cresting wave could crash with the urgency of a tribal alert. When warriors saw patterns in froth or heard whispers in rapids, they weren't imagining things, they were decoding liquid bandwidth, tuned to frequencies modern tech can't replicate. Even today, Maori elders speak of reading rivers like scrolling screens, where every ripple holds legacy data from ancestors. What's striking is how these elemental networks bypassed physical limits. Wind ignored walls, fire vaulted skyward, water carved through stone, each a prototype of wireless transmission long before Hertz or Marconi. But unlike our sterile signals, these carriers had personality. Zephyrus might mischievously reroute a love note to the wrong suitor. Agni could amplify a priest's voice or drown it in soot. Taniwa often demanded offerings before forwarding messages. This wasn't just communication, it was collaboration with capricious forces, where success depended on respecting the medium itself, the lesson embedded in these myths. The ancients understood that nature wasn't just a backdrop for human drama but an active participant in the conversation. We've swapped whispering winds for Wi-Fi waves, but the core truth remains: every message we send, whether on parchment or pixel, still rides the back of some invisible force, hurtling through realms seen and unseen to bridge the gaps between us. In the frozen tundras of Siberia, where the modern world's signals fade into silence, shamans have been logging into a far older network, one that doesn't need Wi-Fi or satellites. Picture this: a shaman crouched in a smoke-filled tent, eyes rolled back, hands pounding a drum at 200 beats per minute. That rhythm isn't just music, it's a dial-up tone for the spirit world, a sacred Morse code that shakes loose the shaman's soul from its mortal casing. The drum's steady pulse acts like a cosmic modem, syncing their consciousness to frequencies beyond ordinary perception. As the tempo climbs, the shaman's chants warp into static, then silence. Connection established, now they're surfing the spirit web, navigating layers of reality where ancestors whisper warnings, disease manifests as visible parasites, and future events unfold like buffering videos. When they return, often hours later, drenched in sweat, they've downloaded diagnoses, prophecies, even blueprints for healing rituals. The drum, that's just the hardware. The real magic happens in the trance state bandwidth, where every beat is a data packet carrying the shaman's awareness deeper into the mythic darknet. Meanwhile, under the emerald canopy of the Amazon, another kind of login protocol unfolds. Ayahuasca, the infamous vine of the dead, isn't just a hallucinogenic brew. It's the ultimate biotech VPN, tunneling drinkers past the firewalls of ordinary reality and into realms where spirits communicate in shimmering geometric code. The shamans here call it La Purga, the purge, because before you access the network, you must clear your cache, vomiting up physical and emotional toxins that slow your connection speed. Once logged in, the visuals aren't random. Serpentine deities slither through the air like living encryption keys, their scales flashing with intelligible patterns. Trees pulse with visible root networks stretching into other dimensions, organic Ethernet cables humming with botanical data. Conversations happen without words, telepathic packets zipping back and forth like neural text messages. And just like a modern VPN, this connection isn't risk-free. Malevolent entities lurk in the digital shadows, hackers of the spirit world waiting to hijack unprepared travelers. That's why ayahuasca shamans, the original cybersecurity experts, sit guard with Icaros, sacred songs that firewall the journey. Now shift to the sun-baked deserts of Australia, where Aboriginal elders navigate without maps or compasses because the land itself is their internet. Songlines, those intricate melodic maps etched into the Earth's surface, function as terrestrial URLs. Every rock, every waterhole, every twist in the path is encoded in rhythmic verses passed down millennia. To Google a location, you don't type, you sing. The very act of walking while chanting the proper sequence triggers a kind of geolocative augmented reality, where the landscape responds by revealing hidden water sources, sacred sites, even weather patterns. It's like the Earth runs on sonic DNS servers. Sing the right query and the terrain resolves into meaning. But songlines aren't just navigation tools, they're massive data transfers carrying legal precedents, genealogies, and ecological knowledge compressed into melodic algorithms. Break the rhythm and the connection drops, sing it true, and you're streaming thousands of years of ancestral wisdom in real time. What ties these systems together is their elegance. Siberian drums convert audio into spiritual access. Ayahuasca translates chemistry into visionary broadband. Songlines transmute vibration into geospatial data. No apps, no screens, just raw, unfiltered communion between human consciousness and the living network humming beneath reality's surface. Modern tech obsesses over faster speeds, but these ancient ISPs focused on depth. A shaman's drumming doesn't just connect, it transforms. Ayahuasca doesn't just show, it teaches. Songlines don't just guide, they remember. Perhaps that's the most humbling revelation. We've built a globe-spanning internet, yet we're still chasing what these traditions mastered. communication that doesn't just inform but transforms. When a Siberian shaman drums, they're not requesting information, they're becoming the signal. That's a bandwidth no fiber optic cable can match. Carved into ancient standing stones and scattered across battle-worn amulets, the runes of Odin weren't just letters, they were living conduits of divine power, crackling with latent energy like mythic QR codes waiting to be scanned. The story goes that Odin hung himself from Yggdrasil for 9 nights, pierced by his own spear, just to wrench these symbols from the void. What he brought back wasn't an alphabet but a cryptographic system, where every stroke and angle held the potential to unlock fate itself. When a Viking warrior etched the rune Tyr onto his sword, he wasn't engraving a T. He was invoking the god Tyr's unbreakable justice, hard-coding divine authority into steel. The Valkyries took this further, carving entire battle prophecies into birch strips and tossing them like cosmic fortune cookies, their twists and burns revealing which warriors would feast in Valhalla and which would bleed out on the field. These weren't passive inscriptions, they were executable commands altering reality with each activation. Cross the sea to the misty highlands of the Celts, and you'd find another script humming with hidden power, ogham. Unlike runes, which channeled gods, ogham letters were said to literally grow from trees, their vertical lines and notches mimicking branches. Druids didn't just write in ogham, they grafted it, slicing the symbols into living bark so the message would pulse through the tree's sap, a natural API calling out to the spirit world. Fionn mac Cool, the legendary Irish hero, carried ogham-inscribed sticks called flesk that functioned like mythic USBs. Thrust one into the earth and it would download wisdom from the land itself, toss it into a river and the current would decrypt its hidden warnings. Some ogham carvings were even directional, read upside down or mirrored. They'd convey entirely different meanings, a dual-layer encryption securing sacred knowledge from profane eyes. What made these scripts revolutionary was their interactivity. A rune wasn't just read, it was activated. The Ansar's rune whispered Odin's counsel when traced with blood. Berkano could speed childbirth if drawn on a mother's palm. Ogham worked similarly, but with an organic twist. Messages changed with the seasons. A birch-engraved plea in spring might be answered by autumn, once the tree had stretched the inscription closer to the gods. This was dynamic, living code, where the medium wasn't passive parchment but responsive materials. Wood, stone, bone that participated in the communication loop. The parallels to modern tech are startling. Runes functioned like machine language, their stark lines executing divine commands at the hardware level. Ogham was more like open source code, its meaning mutable depending on environmental inputs. Both systems required initiation, just as you'd need programming knowledge to hack a mainframe. Only those trained in the Futhok or Ogham's secret keys could safely interface with their power. Mispronounce a rune and instead of protection you might trigger a curse, misalign an ogham notch and your prayer could corrupt into a threat. Yet there's a crucial difference. Where our QR codes and encryption keys are sterile, these symbols pulsed with divine will. When a rune-carved monolith hummed during a thunderstorm, it wasn't malfunctioning, it was communicating. Ogham's very name may come from the Irish word for whisper, a reminder that these weren't inert glyphs but channels for voices just beyond human hearing. Perhaps that's why they endured. In a world saturated with disposable text messages, we still crave writing that doesn't just inform but transforms, ink that bleeds into reality, carving new futures with every stroke. Long before GPS satellites crisscrossed the heavens, ancient navigators were locked into a far grander network, one where constellations weren't just pretty lights but celestial routers pulsing with navigational data. Take Orion, that broad-shouldered hunter striding across Greek myths. His belt wasn't merely 3 stars, it was a cosmic barcode, his upraised sword a flashing beacon signaling between realms. When Artemis needed to coordinate the hunt across continents, she didn't send letters, she repositioned Orion stars, their shifting angles encoding messages for initiates below. The constellation's sudden dimming might warn of drought. An unusual flicker could signal divine favor before battle. This wasn't astrology, it was astrophysical Morse code with the night sky as its chalkboard. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, Polynesian voyagers were mastering an even more sophisticated system. Their star compasses, mental maps dividing the horizon into 32 directional houses, transformed the heavens into a celestial command prompt. Each rising star functioned like a Wi-Fi hotspot, its azimuth and elevation providing real-time navigational corrections as sailors carved through Pacific darkness. The star called Hermes wasn't just a bright point. It was a geostationary satellite locked over Tahiti, guiding canoes with the precision of modern GPS. When clouds obscured the sky, navigators tuned to subtler signals, the way swell patterns reflected unseen stars, or how bioluminescent plankton sparked routes like underwater fiber optic cables. Forget internet outages, these sailors feared cloud cover in the most literal sense. But for pure cryptographic genius, nothing matched the Babylonians and their astrolabes. These intricate star calculators didn't just track planets, they deciphered divine dispatches hidden in celestial patterns. When Mars lingered unusually long in Leo, priests would consult their clay tablets, the original lookup tables, to decode the message: war, famine, or perhaps a king's impending demise. Venus appearing as a morning star instead of evening, that wasn't orbital mechanics, it was Ishtar switching channels, her star tweets requiring careful translation before trending in the royal court. Even eclipses followed precise protocols. The moon didn't merely shadow the sun but enacted celestial encryption, its slow veil revealing cuneiform warnings across the sun's fiery surface. The irony, our modern satellite networks pale in comparison to the elegance of these ancient systems. Starlink beams require ground stations. Polynesian wayfinders needed no infrastructure beyond trained minds. GPS signals degrade inside buildings. Babylonian astrologers could read godly emails from any rooftop. And where our satellites passively relayed data, constellations like Orion actively participated in the dialogue, shifting, flashing, even vanishing to underscore urgent bulletins. Yet perhaps the most profound difference lies in accessibility. Today's space-based internet serves those with receivers and subscriptions, but the ancient celestial network, it was universally open source. A Greek shepherd, Polynesian fisher, or Babylonian baker could all look up and download wisdom provided they knew the protocols. No monthly fees, no data caps, just infinite bandwidth streaming from the ultimate cloud server, the cosmos itself. So tonight, when you glance at the stars, try seeing them as the ancients did, not as distant suns, but as glowing server lights in the sky's vast data center, still humming with messages we've only half learned to receive. Beneath the churning waves where modern fiber optic cables snake across ocean floors, the ancients imagined a far more luminous network, one where aquatic deities and creatures served as living conduits, relaying messages through the liquid dark. Poseidon, the tempestuous Greek god of the seas, didn't just command the tides, he operated a vast hydroacoustic system. His conch shell trumpet wasn't merely a ceremonial instrument but a divine broadband transmitter, its spirals amplifying his voice into subharmonic pulses that traveled for leagues. When blown at full force, the sound could shatter ships, but when modulated, it carried coded directives to Nereids, those fluid messengers who darted through the depths like bioluminescent data packets. These sea nymphs didn't simply deliver notes, they interpreted them, adjusting cadence and tone based on the current's mood. A whispered word might arrive gentler in calm coves, harsher where storms brewed nature's own adaptive bitrate. Meanwhile, in the sun-drenched deltas of Yorubaland, the goddess Yamoja presided over a different kind of liquid network. Her messengers weren't nymphs but entire rivers, their winding courses acting as self-healing signal paths. When a devotee dropped a prayer-filled calabash into the Ogham River, it didn't just float, it navigated. the river's eddies and whirlpools functioned like aquatic switches, routing offerings directly to Ymoja's court. Even more astonishing were her fish, which scholars describe as scale-script carriers. Certain species, like the electric catfish, were believed to encode messages in their erratic movements, their zapping pulses forming a kind of piscine telegraph. Fishermen spoke of catching these creatures only to find their bodies inscribed with faint, glowing marks, divine readouts vanishing upon contact with air. Now plunge into the jade-green waters of Imperial China, where the Dragon Kings ruled not just the seas but an elaborate tide-based communication grid. Edicts from the Celestial Emperor didn't travel by boat, they rode the waves themselves. Officials along the coast would monitor tidal patterns for anomalies. A sudden backflow at midday might signal an impending tax decree, while an unnaturally high tide under a crescent moon could warn of war. The Dragon King's system had redundancy, too. If storms disrupted surface messages, carp would carry duplicates along subterranean aquifers, their gills filtering imperial ink into legible glyphs upon arrival. This wasn't mythic whimsy, it was a meticulously designed protocol with tides as carrier waves and marine life as error-correcting nodes. What unites these systems is their biomimicry, where modern cables rely on inert glass and steel. Ancient myths envisioned networks woven from life itself. Poseidon's conch harnessed resonant acoustics, Ymoja's rivers self-organized like a neural net. The Dragon King's tides functioned as clockwork synchronization pulses. And where our undersea cables degrade or snap, these mythic networks self-repaired. A shattered conch might regrow its spirals. Ymoja's rivers changed course to avoid blockages. The Dragon King's carp repopulated after disasters. The lesson: the ancients didn't just predict submarine cables, they imagined something richer. In their world, messages weren't sterile data but living things, shaped by the medium that carried them. A modern email arrives the same in Tokyo or Toronto, but Poseidon's roar mutated with each league traveled. Ymoja's fish adapted their signals to local waters, and the Dragon King's tides carried regional subtext. Perhaps that's the real magic we've lost, not the speed of communication, but its soul. Deep in the mountain passes of Greece, where cliffs curve like cupped hands, Echo's voice still lingers, not as a fading myth, but as the ancient world's most haunting voice memo system. Cursed by Hera to repeat only the last words she heard, this nymph became an accidental pioneer in audio storage. But here's the twist: her repetitions weren't random. Like a cosmic recorder set to loop, Echo's fragments held meaning. When she echoed Narcissus's cries, she wasn't just mimicking, she was archiving. Hunters soon realized these cliffs functioned as natural servers, replaying critical warnings: a wolf's growl from yesterday, a storm's first thunderclap from last week. Over time, locals learned to query Echo strategically, shouting coded phrases to retrieve specific echoes. Need last month's landslide alert, shout toward the northeast cliff at dusk when the air's density optimized playback. This wasn't just physics, it was mythic cloud storage with every syllable preserved in stone. Meanwhile, back at Delphi, the oracle's chamber hid an acoustic secret. Modern archaeologists found its walls are lined with a rare porous limestone that absorbs low frequencies but amplifies high ones, essentially a divine noise-canceling filter. When the Pythia muttered Apollo's prophecies, the chamber's curvature focused her voice into a beam, projecting it straight to the priest's ear across the room like supernatural directional speakers. Even whispers carried, while crowd noise dissolved into the wall's honeycomb structure. This wasn't mystical coincidence, it was sacred acoustic engineering, turning the temple into a celestial conference call where only authorized voices got through. Now journey north to the wind-scoured coasts of the Arctic, where Inuit legends speak of Sedna's underwater halls and the sea caves that served as her hydrophones. These caverns, shaped like spiraling conch shells, channeled oceanic vibrations into audible messages. When hunters pressed their ears to certain alcoves, they didn't hear random waves but patterned knocks, Two quick, one slow meant seal herds were near. A sustained hum warned of thin ice ahead. Sedna's updates traveled through the water itself, encoded in pressure changes that the cave's resonant frequencies decoded into speech like rhythms. During the aurora's shimmering displays, some elders claimed the caves even relayed multilingual broadcasts, whale song morphing momentarily into human speech, as if the planet's entire acoustic web momentarily synced. What made these systems revolutionary was their passivity. Unlike Hermes' exhausting flights or smoke signals requiring constant tending, Echo's cliffs, Delphi's stones, and Sedna's caves operated 24/7, powered solely by nature's infrastructure. No maintenance, no energy costs, just wisdom waiting to be retrieved. They also shared an eerie trait, selective degradation. Echo preserved only the most emotionally charged phrases. Delphi's walls amplified only certain vocal ranges. Sedna's caves filtered out everything but survival-critical data. This wasn't archival, it was algorithmic, as if the myths themselves had developed compression protocols to prioritize signal over noise. Today, we'd call this edge computing, processing data at the source rather than sending it to distant servers. But the ancients understood something we're just rediscovering. Sometimes the most powerful network isn't the one that transmits everything, but the one that knows exactly what to repeat, what to amplify, and what to let fade into silence. The rocks remember, the caves listen, and if you stand in the right place at the right time with the right intent, you might just catch a whisper that's been circling the world for centuries. At the heart of Tenochtitlan's towering temples, Aztec priests performed a gruesome yet precise form of divine data trance for human sacrifice as cosmic broadband. When a captive warrior's heart was torn from his chest, the rising plume of sacred smoke wasn't just ceremonial. It was a living upload protocol carrying encoded petitions straight to the god's celestial inbox. The priests timed these sacrifices with astronomical precision, aligning smoke streams with Venus's morning appearances or solar zeniths to boost signal strength. Thicker smoke meant higher bandwidth. A sudden wind shift could scramble the message like a corrupted file. They even graded sacrifices by data priority. Commoners' blood sent routine updates, but a king's sacrifice. That was Mythic fiber optic cable, capable of transmitting entire empires' worth of prayers in a single crimson burst. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, Roman augurs were decoding a different kind of celestial traffic, bird flights as divine data packets. These priests didn't just watch for eagles or vultures, they analyzed flight vectors with the precision of network technicians monitoring packet loss. A bird crossing left to right might signal approval, while sudden wing dips indicated corrupted transmissions requiring retries. The sacred temple auguraculum wasn't a mere observatory, it was a first-century network operations center, its grid-like templum dividing the sky into quadrants for error-checking divine signals. When geese flew in perfect V formations, the Romans saw checksums validating heaven's latest firmware update. Miss a formation, misinterpret a wing beat, and you risk deploying legions based on a heavenly typo. Now vault to the volcanic slopes of Hawaii, where caller prophets interpreted lightning not as random strikes but as the gods' live streams. A jagged bolt splitting the night sky wasn't electricity. It was Ku's urgent press release, its forked path spelling out layered meanings in celestial binary. Blue-tinged flashes signaled Peel's volcanic updates. Horizontal streaks were Lono's agricultural advisories. The caller even had protocols for buffering when lightning flickered without thunder. It meant the message was still downloading, requiring chanted prompts to resume transmission. These prophets didn't just observe, they interacted, tossing sacred Owa roots into lava flows to refresh the connection when divine streams grew choppy. What united these systems was their brutal efficiency. Aztec smoke carried one-way dispatches with no confirmation receipts, only subsequent omens hinted at delivery success. Roman augury demanded constant error correction, with sacrificed sheep livers serving as divine ping tests. Hawaiian caller faced the ultimate latency issue. A delayed lightning response could mean famine or invasion. Yet all three cultures shared an unshakable belief that the universe wasn't just sending signals, but awaiting human collaboration to complete the circuit. The chilling beauty lies in how these methods prefigured modern tech. Aztec smoke rituals mirror our packet-sniffing tools, hunting for lost data in transmission trails. Roman bird tracking presaged network path optimization algorithms. Hawaiian lightning readings, the original live-stream analytics, passing divine engagement metrics in real time. But where we rely on silicon and steel, they trusted something far more volatile: the willing flesh of devotees, the erratic paths of winged couriers, the capricious fury of the skies. Perhaps that's why these systems faded, not from inefficiency, but from the unbearable weight of their own protocols. After all, rebooting a router is easy restarting a sacrificial economy. That requires gods with very particular appetites. When Perseus faced the Gorgon Medusa, his most crucial weapon wasn't just his sword or winged sandals. It was Athena's polished shield, functioning as the ancient world's most ingenious mirror portal. This wasn't merely a reflective surface, it was a divine VPN, granting the hero encrypted access to view Medusa indirectly, his gaze bouncing off the bronze-like data packets routed through proxy servers to avoid detection. The shield didn't just deflect, it transformed, turning lethal vision into actionable intelligence. Athena's gift essentially let Perseus remote view the Gorgon without triggering her petrifying firewall, a celestial workaround that predated modern encryption by millennia. Venture east to the gleaming bronze mirrors of China's Han Dynasty, and you'll find an even darker application of reflective tech. These weren't vanity objects but mythic terminals to the underworld's dark web. When exposed to moonlight at precise angles, their surfaces allegedly revealed shadowy figures, ancestors, demons, even the bureaucracy of Diyu's courts. Taoist priests called this Chinese letter Tu Guang Jian, or light-piercing mirrors, for their ability to render the invisible visible. The trick lay in their construction. Microscopic patterns etched into the bronze back, unseen to the naked eye but projected as spectral imagery when light hit the front just right. To the ancients, this wasn't optics, it was sorcery, a backdoor into realms where the dead filed grievances and deities issued verdicts. Holding one at midnight became the equivalent of logging into a ghostly Tor network, anonymous browsing with existential stakes. Now descend into the misty highlands of the Maya, where obsidian mirrors served as the ultimate shamanic screenshare devices. Fashioned from volcanic glass so pure it reflected like liquid mercury, these spirit windows let priests conduct real-time seances with the otherworld. A shaman might smear the surface with hallucinogenic ointments, their active compounds absorbed through the fingertips while staring into the mirror's depths. As their pupils dilated, the obsidian became a two-way interface. Spirits could peer through from the other side, their features warping in the glass like video calls through a lagging connection. The Maya called it Yibble, meaning seeing place, but it functioned more like a Zoom room for the afterlife, complete with signal hiccups. Spanish chronicles tell of priests whose mirrors froze mid-session, trapping spirit interlocutors mid-sentence until ceremonial reboots with copal incense cleared the cache. What unites these mirror portals is their dual nature, equal parts receiver and transmitter. Athena's shield didn't just protect Perseus, it actively fed him tactical data. Chinese bronze mirrors didn't passively show the underworld, they required user input, specific angles and incantations to activate. Mayan obsidian didn't merely reflect, it became a membrane, thin enough for voices and visions to permeate both directions. This was no mere superstition. Modern experiments show certain polished obsidian surfaces can induce trance states through the Ganzfeld effect, where the brain hallucinates into uniform visual fields. Bronze mirrors with hidden etchings do project ghostly images under exact lighting, and polished shields. They genuinely helped warriors track threats in their peripheral vision without direct eye contact. Perhaps the most haunting legacy of these mirror portals is their ambivalence. Where today's screens deliver predictable content, these mythic interfaces remained stubbornly capricious. A Maya shaman might request a weather forecast and receive a prophecy of doom instead. A Chinese noble peering into his bronze mirror could glimpse not his ancestor but a hungry ghost leering back. Even Perseus's shield-carried risk stare too long, and you might see not just your target but the fates knitting your own lifeline into their tapestry. That's the paradox of the mythic internet. The most powerful connections always demand sacrifice, whether it's your reflection, your certainty, or sometimes your very soul. When Orpheus strummed his lyre at the gates of the underworld, he wasn't just playing a mournful tune. He was executing a precision hack on Hades' firewall, using harmonic frequencies to bypass the realm's deathly encryption. The strings of his instrument didn't simply pluck at heartstrings. They vibrated at resonant frequencies that matched the underworld's own spectral wavelengths, essentially spoofing the system into recognizing him as a legitimate user. Even Cerberus, that triple-headed bouncer of the afterlife, slumped into a trance, his growls sinking to the rhythm like a corrupted security protocol. The lyre's secret, a 7-note scale said to be reverse-engineered from the muses themselves, each interval acting as a tonal key to different cosmic layers. Orpheus didn't just charm his way in, he played the exact algorithmic sequence to force a backdoor open, if only temporarily. Meanwhile, under the blistering sun of the Australian outback, a different kind of sonic networking pulsed through the air. The didgeridoo's drone wasn't just music, it was a vibrational carrier wave for dreamtime data. Aboriginal elders knew that when played at specific resonant frequencies, the instrument's sound could unlock sections of the songlines, those melodic maps etched into the land. The longer the drone sustained, the more information it could encode. A rapid flutter might signal the location of a hidden waterhole, while a deep, oscillating hum could transmit entire creation stories. Some legends even speak of master players whose didgeridoos triggered physical changes in the environment, cracking open dry riverbeds or summoning rain clouds, as if the sound itself was rewriting the landscape's source code. Now ascend to the celestial courts of Hindu mythology, where the Gandharvas, those angelic musicians of the gods, weren't just performers but divine cryptographers. Their ragas weren't mere melodies, they were sonic ciphers, each note sequence encrypting messages meant for specific deities. A morning raga played in the Bhairav scale might carry administrative updates for Indra, while the same notes shifted to a Malhar scale during monsoon season became urgent weather alerts. The brilliance lay in their impermanence. Unlike written scrolls that could be intercepted, these sonic memos dissolved into the air after delivery, leaving no trace for eavesdroppers. Even more intriguing, the Gandharvas could layer multiple messages into a single performance, a technique modern engineers would recognize as frequency division multiplexing millennia before broadband. What ties these musical networks together is their interactivity. Orpheus's lyre required real-time adjustment. One misplayed note, and the underworld's defenses would snap shut. The didgeridoo's power depended on the player's breath control, its vibrations syncing with the land's natural resonances like a handshake protocol, and the Gandharva's ragas. They demanded perfect pitch, as celestial recipients would reject even slightly off-key transmissions. This wasn't just art, it was high-stakes protocol negotiation, where a missed beat could mean failed delivery. A broken rhythm might corrupt the message, and only the most skilled musicians held admin privileges to the mythic internet. The lesson embedded in these harmonies is profound. Where we rely on sterile, standardized encryption, ancient systems wove security into the very fabric of performance. A hacker might steal Orpheus's lyre, but without his precise finger placements, it was just wood and string. A rival tribe could mimic a didgeridoo sound, but without the ancestral knowledge of its tonal keys, the land remained silent. And the Gandharva's Rogas, they were the original multi-factor authentication, requiring not just the right notes but the right time, place, and intent. So the next time music gives you chills, consider this. You might not just be feeling emotion. You could be sensing the ghost of an ancient signal, still vibrating somewhere in the air, waiting for the right ears to decode it. In the silent corridors of the Duat Egypt's sprawling underworld, the dead didn't rely on couriers or birds to send messages. They had something far more intimate, their own shadows. The Kaibit, or shadow soul, wasn't just a patch of darkness trailing behind a person. It was a living, breathing backup drive, storing every whispered secret, every unspoken regret. When a pharaoh died, his Kaibit didn't vanish. It became a spectral postman, shuttling prayers and petitions between the realm of the living and the hall of judgment. Picture a noblewoman etching a plea onto a thin sheet of gold, then pressing it into the hands of her late husband's shadow as it stretched unnaturally long in the sunset. By dawn, that message would arrive in the afterlife, absorbed into the shadow's inky fabric like data written in invisible ink. The brilliance shadows couldn't be intercepted. They slipped beneath doors, through cracks, past demonic gatekeepers, the original end-to-end encrypted messengers. Meanwhile, in Greece's sun-drenched lands, a different kind of shadow network thrived. The Skia, pale, wispy remnants of the dead floated through Hades' realm like ghostly packet switches, relaying whispers along their misty chains. When Odysseus descended into the underworld, he didn't just speak to the shades. He watched them pass messages hand to hand, not with words but with subtle shifts in their smoke-like forms. A warrior's Skia might darken momentarily to signal agreement. A poet's could ripple with encoded verses. These weren't passive spirits but an active communication grid, stitching together the underworld's vast expanse. The Catch Skia degraded with time. A freshly deceased soul's shadow carried crisp, clear dispatches, but after centuries in Hades, their forms grew faint, mythic data loss in action. Now cross the world to feudal Japan, where the Cage Honor, the Shadow Woman, turned darkness itself into a lethal transmission medium. She wasn't a ghost but a living hacker of the light, stretching her shadow across walls and floors to eavesdrop on secrets. Samurai whispered of Cage Honor intercepting battle plans by merging her shadow with a general's, then leaking intelligence through the very darkness that should have concealed them. Some tales describe her shadow peeling away like a sheet of black silk, slithering under doors to spy, reshape, even strangle, a reminder that not all shadow networks were benign. The most chilling accounts claim Cage Honor could store voices in patches of darkness, replaying them hours later when someone passed by, like a malevolent voicemail system woven from pure absence. What made these shadow networks so potent was their duality, both universal and deeply personal. Every human cast a shadow, yet each one carried unique data. Egyptian Kaibit preserved individual memories. Greek Skia bore the emotional weight of their senders. Japanese Cage Honor weaponized the intimacy of darkness itself. And where modern dark fiber cables lie buried and inert, these mythic systems thrived on interaction. A Kaibit required moonlight to activate. Skia needed the breath of the living to carry messages. Cage Honor's power waxed with human fear. Perhaps that's why they haunt us still. In an age of satellite feeds and quantum encryption, we've never quite shaken the primal sense that shadows are more than empty space. That flicker at the corner of your vision, the way your shadow sometimes lags a half step behind, could it just be tricks of the light, or the faintest echo of a network humanity once knew by instinct, whispering through the oldest, darkest cables of all? At the fog-shrouded crossroads where three paths converged, Hecate didn't just linger, she encrypted. The Greeks knew these intersections weren't mere meeting points but mythic firewalls, liminal zones where the goddess installed rigorous authentication protocols. To pass through unscathed, travelers had to leave offerings at precise lunar phases, honey at the waning moon, garlic at the dark, as if depositing cryptographic keys into the earth. A misplaced sacrifice or poorly timed prayer that triggered Hecate's intrusion detection system, rerouting the offender into spiritual dead ends or worse, straight into the clutches of roaming spirits. The triple-faced goddess herself functioned as the ultimate proxy server, scrutinizing every soul's headers before granting passage. Even Odysseus, that master of workarounds, couldn't bypass her defenses without proper rites, proof that in the ancient world, firewalls weren't just technical but sacred. Meanwhile, in the pre-dawn hush of South Indian villages, another kind of digital hygiene unfolded. Hindu women drew columns' labyrinthine rice flower designs on their thresholds each morning. These weren't decorations but fractal firewalls, their geometric precision acting as spam filters for malevolent entities. Each loop and dot carried symbolic weight. Concentric circles trapped negative energy like honeypots, intersecting lines formed mythic captures, and the rice flower itself, a temporary medium, forced demons to solve fresh puzzles daily. The column's power lay in its impermanence. Wash away yesterday's design, and you cleared the cache, forcing evil to recalculate its attack vectors from scratch. Some columns even incorporated hidden mantras, their curves mimicking the vibrational patterns of protective chants, essentially embedding audio firewalls into visual art. Now track the icy winds to Viking longships where navigators consulted the Yggdrasil, the Norse wayfinder rune, not just for direction but for cryptographic pathing. This 8-armed symbol wasn't a simple compass, it was a spiritual VPN, its branches representing encrypted routes through both physical and metaphysical storms. Carved onto ship prows or inked onto skin, the Yggdrasil didn't prevent turbulence, it rerouted travelers around cursed waters and spectral interference. Sagas describe ships avoiding whirlpools that weren't there, finding calm seas where maps showed none, as if the rune was constantly refreshing its connection to Odin's celestial routing table. The secret, its arms weren't static but shifted subtly under different light, revealing layered sub-symbols that only initiates could decode, a multi-factor authentication system written in ash and blood. What united these systems was their dynamic nature. Hecate's crossroads changed validation rules with the moon's phase. Columns demanded daily redrawing to maintain integrity. The Yggdrasil's encrypted subpaths responded to celestial conditions. Modern cybersecurity struggles with similar challenges: password rotations, firmware updates, adaptive threat detection, yet the ancients solved them with chalk, flour, and carved bone. The deeper insight, these weren't just barriers but interfaces. Hecate's crossroads filtered malicious traffic while permitting legitimate divine messages. Columns blocked demons but welcomed benevolent spirits through allow-list symbols like lotus motifs. The Yggdrasil didn't obliterate storms, it negotiated safe passage with them. In an era obsessed with firewalls that outright block, perhaps we've forgotten the mythic art of selective permeability, defenses that don't just say no, but show me your credentials. After all, even the tightest security must sometimes let the right things through, whether it's a prayer, a prophecy, or a ship carrying souls to the next world. High on Mount Kailash, where the air thins into silence, Shiva's third eye pulses like a celestial uplink, not just a symbol of destruction, but the ultimate cosmic antenna. This unblinking orb didn't merely see, it received. Hindu texts describe it tuning into frequencies beyond mortal comprehension, decoding the universe's raw data into divine insight. When Shiva opened this eye, it wasn't just wrath unleashed, it was a broadband connection to Brahman itself, a direct line to the cosmic mainframe. The eye's vertical placement wasn't accidental. Positioned above the duality of human vision, it functioned as a mythic parabolic dish, capturing signals from realms where time folded and gods whispered in quantum static. Even its destructive power mirrored modern tech. Overload the receiver with too much unfiltered truth, and entire worlds could crash like corrupted hard drives. Meanwhile, on the serene faces of Buddhist statues, that tiny curl between the brows, the urna isn't just artistic flair. These spiraled hairs act as enlightenment's fiber optic cables, each strand fine-tuned to vibrate with the Dharma's subtlest frequencies. Legend says the Buddha's urna could detect suffering from continents away, its filaments twitching like spiritual seismographs at the first tremor of human anguish. Monks in deep meditation reported feeling the urna resonate not as itch or pressure, but as a crystalline hum, as if their foreheads had grown satellite dishes barely an inch wide, locking onto the pure signal beneath life's noise. Theravada texts even speak of advanced practitioners whose urnas elongated into luminous threads, physically manifesting their capacity to download wisdom from the Akashic cloud. Now descend into the mist-wrapped mountains of Taoist alchemy, where adepts practiced needed not just inner alchemy, but a full body retuning to immortal wavelengths. Through breath, movement, and visualized light, they transformed their organs into living transceivers. The heart became a jade furnace emitting compassion's frequency. The kidneys vibrated with primordial water energy. The pineal gland, polished like a quartz crystal, amplified celestial broadcasts into actionable insight. This wasn't metaphor. Practitioners meticulously mapped energy gates along the spine that functioned like mythic Ethernet ports, channeling heavenly Chi into the body's meridian network. The most advanced could reportedly overhear star song in their marrow, their entire skeletal structure humming like a bone conduction headset for the cosmos. What unites these systems is their insistence that biology itself could evolve into sacred technology. Shiva's eye required no external hardware. It was organic optics refined through millennia of divine coding. The Buddha's urna needed no power source beyond virtue's voltage. Taoist adepts turned their very breath into encryption protocols, their exhalations carrying compressed data packets of wisdom. Modern science faintly echoes this. The pineal gland does contain light-sensitive cells. Human hair can conduct subtle electromagnetic charges. Certain meditative states dramatically alter brainwave coherence. Yet here's where the ancients outpace us. Where we build external devices, antennas, routers, satellites, they cultivated internal upgrades. A yogi's third eye activation wasn't about adding hardware but unlocking pre-installed firmware. The urna's signal strength didn't depend on wattage but moral clarity, and Needham's ultimate goal, to turn the entire body into a self-sustaining node in the immortal internet, transmitting and receiving long after the flesh should have decayed. So the next time you rub your forehead in thought, consider that slight tingle might not be fatigue. It could be your own latent receiver, straining to catch a signal from a network that's been streaming since the dawn of time. When Croesus stood before the oracle of Delphi, his question seemed simple. Should I wage war against Persia? The reply, that he would destroy a great empire, arrived instantly, but its true meaning took years to unpack. This wasn't a glitch in the system, it was divine buffering at work. The gods didn't operate on mortal timelines. Their prophecies often came pre-loaded with latency, like celestial emails set to decrypt only when the stars aligned. Croesus assumed the doomed empire was Persia's, but the data packet contained a brutal twist. The empire in question was his own. The prophecy had been sitting in his metaphysical inbox all along, its attachment slowly extracting in the background while history marched toward its inevitable reveal. Meanwhile, in the frostbitten halls of Norse mythology, the Norns were the ultimate schedulers of fate. These three weavers, Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld, didn't just spin threads, they programmed destiny's delivery queue. Each life was a tapestry of scheduled events, with critical moments flagged like calendar invites. A hero's death might be woven decades in advance, its threads lying dormant until the precise moment of activation. When Ragnarok's alarms finally blared, it wasn't chaos erupting. It was the Norns' long dormant subroutines executing, their apocalyptic code compiling after centuries of silent runtime. Even Odin, with all his foresight, could only watch as the buffers cleared and the prophecies rendered in real time. Across the ocean, the Maya perfected temporal messaging with their sprawling calendar systems. Their long count wasn't just a clock, it was a cosmic scheduler, its interlocking gears counting down to predetermined celestial push notifications. A katon ending roughly 20 years didn't merely mark time, it triggered coded events. Temples aligned to solstice sunlight would suddenly ignite with meaning, their staircases casting shadow serpents exactly as the calendar predicted. Priests decoded these alignments like system alerts, each one containing nested instructions, harvest dates, war declarations, even the precise hour for ritual bloodletting to refresh the cosmic connection. The infamous 2012 phenomenon, just a mistranslation of Maya buffer protocols. Their calendars didn't predict the end of the world, but a major firmware update for humanity. What made these delayed messages so potent was their inevitability. A Greek oracle's words couldn't be unheard, a Norn's weave couldn't be unknotted. A Maya calendar event couldn't be snoozed. Unlike modern notifications that vanish with a swipe, these mythic alerts were programmed into reality's source code. The delay wasn't a bug, it was a feature. It forced mortals to sit with uncertainty, to parse meaning from the gap between sending and receiving. Today, we've outsourced this tension to loading bars and progress wheels, but the ancient lesson remains. Some messages aren't meant for instant consumption. They're seeds planted in time, coded to bloom only when the soil of circumstance is ready. So the next time your screen buffers, remember, you're not waiting on data. You're participating in a ritual as old as prophecy itself, where the space between sending and receiving isn't empty. It's where destiny does its quiet, inevitable work. On the sun-baked slopes of ancient Greece, Dionysus didn't just throw parties, he hosted the original mass livestream, where entire villages logged into the same divine channel. Imagine hundreds of maenads, their minds synchronized in ecstatic frenzy, dancing until the boundaries between individual souls dissolved into a single pulsing signal. This wasn't mere intoxication, it was collective bandwidth overload, a spiritual DDoS attack on ordinary consciousness. The god's Theus' staff acted as a mythic antenna, channeling his broadcast into the revelers' nervous systems until they saw the same visions: phantom panthers, phantom rivers, phantom stars swirling in perfect unison. Historians note eerie consistencies in their reports, identical descriptions of Dionysus's cloak color, the same phantom vineyard locations, as if their brains had been temporarily hardwired into the same hallucinatory server. Meanwhile, beneath the endless skies of the North American plains, Lakota vision quests achieved a different kind of synchronization. Young warriors undertaking Hanbulsaya, the crying for a vision ritual, often emerged from their solitary vigils with startlingly similar downloads, identical animal guides matching fragments of song, even shared premonitions of future events. Tribal elders understood this wasn't coincidence but proof the seekers had momentarily tapped into the tribe's ancestral Wi-Fi. The vision pit itself functioned as a sacred hotspot, its circular shape focusing spiritual signals like a satellite dish. When multiple participants quested simultaneously on nearby butts, their visions frequently interlaced. A warrior seeing the left wing of an eagle, another saw the right wing of, or one hearing the beginning of a chant another completed. This wasn't just personal revelation, it was multiplayer reality where individual quests formed nodes in a larger network updating in real time. Now shift to the firelit caves of the Himalayas, where Hindu ascetics in Samadhi didn't just meditate, they logged into Brahman's cloud storage. Their breath patterns became encryption keys, unlocking access to cosmic consciousness like a biometric authentication. Texts describe yogis miles apart experiencing the same revelations simultaneously, one tasting ambrosia as another smelt its fragrance, or both receiving identical fragments of forgotten scriptures. The secret: they'd bypassed individual mind servers to directly access the Akashic Records, ancient India's version of a celestial blockchain where every thought and event was immutably stored. Advanced practitioners could reportedly scroll through these records via subtle eye movements beneath closed lids, their retinas projecting luminous text only visible in deep trance. What united these experiences was their shared infrastructure. The Maenads' frenzy required the gods' presence as a signal booster. Lakota questers aligned through sacred geography, yogis synced via disciplined breathwork. Each system had its own firewall too. Dionysian rites demanded precise ritual sequences to prevent psychic overload. Vision questers needed elder guidance to filter harmful downloads, and Samadhi required lifetimes of preparation to handle raw cosmic data. The chilling beauty: we've recreated these systems digitally without realizing it. Virtual reality headsets mimic Dionysian's shared hallucinations. Slack channels echo the Lakota's synchronized visions. Cloud computing mirrors the yogi's Akashic access. But where we rely on external hardware, the ancients turned consciousness itself into the ultimate interface, proving that the most powerful networks aren't built with silicon and code, but with wine, sweat, and the unwavering focus of a mind stretched to the edge of eternity. When Icarus plunged from the sky, his wings melting under the sun's glare, it wasn't just a tragic accident, it was the ancient equivalent of a catastrophic signal drop. His father Daedalus had given him clear instructions: stay mid-altitude, avoid both the sea's damp interference and the sun's scorching bandwidth overload. But Icarus, drunk on the thrill of connection, soared too close to the divine servers. The result, a full system crash, his body tumbling through the air like a corrupted data packet rejected by the god's firewall. The myth reads like a brutal error log: user exceeded authorized clearance, connection terminated. Now consider Cassandra, cursed by Apollo to see the future with perfect clarity, only to have her warnings marked as spam by everyone around her. Her prophecies weren't flawed, they were trapped in Troy's collective junk folder, their urgency stripped away by divine malware. Each desperate prediction, beware the wooden horse, bounced off Trojan firewalls, flagged as phishing attempts by a kingdom that trusted its antivirus more than a seer. This wasn't just foresight ignored, it was a cosmic mail server glitch where life or death memos piled up unread while Troy's downfall downloaded in the background. Meanwhile, in the ziggurats of Babylon, astronomers tracked celestial patterns like network admins scanning for anomalies. A skipped lunar eclipse wasn't just an astronomical event, it was a divine 404, destiny not found. Tablets record priests performing elaborate debugging rituals to restore communication. Animal sacrifices to clear the cache, incense to reboot the connection. Even temple processions that physically retraced ceremonial routes like technicians resetting cables. One inscription describes a king who misread an omen as favorable only to lose a battle disastrously. The post-mortem, fatal misinterpretation of celestial API response. Verify credentials before retry. What makes these myths so chilling is their precision. Icarus didn't just fall, his crash followed specific protocol violations. Cassandra's spam filter wasn't random, it was Apollo's personalized denial of service attack. The Babylonian omens followed strict error codes, their meanings documented in cuneiform lookup tables. This wasn't superstition, it was an entire troubleshooting framework for divine connectivity issues. The lesson embedded in these stories: the ancients understood that broken communication wasn't just inconvenient, it was existential. A single corrupted prophecy could topple cities. One misaligned ritual might doom harvests for years. Their myths remind us that every system has its limits, its vulnerabilities, its fatal Control-Alt-Delete moments. And sometimes the scariest words aren't "you're wrong," their message failed to send. Try again later, if ever. In the hushed halls of Egyptian myth, names weren't just labels, they were root-level encryption keys, granting total control over whatever or whoever they belonged to. Take Isis, the cunning goddess who refused to accept Ra's declining authority. She didn't challenge him with force. She hacked his divinity by extracting his true name, the ultimate admin password. Legend says she crafted a serpent from Ra's own spittle, its venomous bite forcing the sun god to scream his secret name in agony. The moment those syllables left his lips, Isis gained sysadmin privileges over creation itself. This wasn't theft, it was a divine privilege escalation, leveraging Ra's own authentication protocol against him. After that, every spell she cast began with his name, as if prefacing each command with pseudo, the ultimate cosmic override. Meanwhile, in the shadowy forests of European folklore, a different kind of naming vulnerability lurked. Rumpelstiltskin's entire existence revolved around a fatal flaw in his spiritual firewall, his true name. The miller's daughter didn't defeat him with strength or magic, she exploited his namespace. Once she guessed his name, his power over her vanished like a revoked license. This wasn't just a fairy tale quirk, it reflected a widespread belief that names functioned as checksums for the soul. Know the name, bypass the defenses. Germanic tribes whispered their children's true names only in darkness, fearing daylight eavesdroppers could intercept and misuse them. Even Rome's sacred rituals demanded priests cover their heads while invoking divine names, shielding the syllables from cosmic packet sniffers. Now shift to the misty peaks of Taoist China, where talismans known as Fu turned calligraphy into cryptographic art. These weren't mere paper charms but celestial SSL certificates, their swirling brushstrokes encoding star maps and divine seals. A properly inked Fu granted safe passage through haunted realms or authenticated prayers to the Jade Emperor's court. The secret, their ink-blended cinnabar, a mercury compound, with the calligrapher's breath embedding biological signatures into the script. Forged talismans failed because they lacked the creator's Chi, like a fake HTTPS certificate missing the CA's private key. Some Fu even layered their encryptions, visible characters for novice priests, hidden Yuzi jade patterns for advanced adepts, and microscopic Tanwain celestial scripts decipherable only by immortals, a triple-layer handshake protocol for the spirit world. What united these systems was their elegant brutality. Ra's name couldn't be reset like a forgotten password. Once compromised, it stayed compromised. Rumpelstiltskin's vulnerability was baked into his very being. No patches, no updates. Taoist Fu required such precise strokes that a single brush hair out of place voided the entire certificate. This wasn't security through obscurity, it was security through sacredness, where the act of naming or inking carried existential weight, the chilling takeaway. Modern encryption struggles with similar paradoxes. We guard private keys with biometrics and hardware modules, just as pharaohs entombed their true names in sealed chambers. Two-factor authentication mirrors the Taoist blend of ink and breath, something you have and something you are. And like Rumpelstiltskin, we still fear doxing, the digital equivalent of having your true name screamed into the wrong ears. Some vulnerabilities, it seems, are written into the fabric of communication itself, whether the medium is parchment or Python. Stonehenge's towering megaliths don't just stand silent, they loom like ancient servers frozen mid-reboot, their stone columns once humming with celestial data now reduced to mysterious ruins. Archaeologists debate whether these slabs tracked solstices or predicted eclipses, but the deeper truth is undeniable. This was a mythic mainframe, a Neolithic supercomputer designed to sync earthly lives with cosmic rhythms. Like a decommissioned data center, its purpose lingers in fragments, the heel stone aligning with midsummer sunrise, the Aubrey holes possibly mapping lunar cycles, echoes of a system that once processed heavenly algorithms with stone circuitry. Could it wake again? Some modern druids insist the stones still hold latent power, waiting for the right sequence of chance or alignments to reactivate their dormant protocols, like stumbling upon the login screen of a forgotten celestial intranet. Meanwhile, in Japan's misty forests, Shinto shrines stand eerily quiet. their commie spirits seemingly logged out after centuries of uninterrupted service. These weren't just places of worship, they were access points to a living network where every rock, tree, and stream pulsed with divine data traffic. Now many sit like abandoned terminals, their sacred ropes frayed and bells stilled. Yet locals whisper of moments when a rustling leaf or sudden breeze carries the old patterns, a flicker of the mythic signal struggling to reconnect. In Fushimi, the fox statues guarding deserted Inari shrines sometimes gleam with inexplicable dew at dawn, as if the servers briefly pinged back online during the night system maintenance. Then there are China's oracle bones, cracked tortoise shells, and ox scapulae covered in faded inscriptions. 3,000 years ago, these were the original solid-state drives, storing questions for the gods in delicate glyphs before being thrust into fire to receive binary answers, crack or no crack. Now they gather dust in museums, their once vital encryption keys lost to time. But in 2010, researchers at Peking University made a tantalizing discovery. When exposed to specific infrared frequencies, some bones revealed hidden markings, subsurface layers of divination data, like cosmic cookies still holding fragments of the Shang dynasty's search history. Could these artifacts still contain decipherable divine code? The haunting question isn't just whether these systems could reboot, it's whether we'd recognize their reactivation. Stonehenge might realign not with a thunderclap but a barely perceptible shift in magnetic fields. A commie might return as an odd clustering of fireflies rather than a booming voice. And those oracle bones, their messages could be hiding in plain sight, etched into the fractal patterns of computer chips or the static between radio stations. After all, the mythic internet never really disappears, it just waits like an old dial-up tone humming beneath the noise of modern life for someone to redial the right number. We swipe screens instead of reading smoke signals, but the longing remains the same, to tap into something bigger, to feel the pulse of a hidden network humming beneath daily life. Consider how memes explode overnight, mutating as they leap from phone to phone like digital folklore. A single viral image of a dress can fracture the internet into warring color perception tribes, or a whisper of "Let's go Brandon" can rewrite political lexicons. These aren't just trends, they're modern myth-making collective stories we co-author at the speed of Wi-Fi. The Greeks had Hermes to carry whispers between realms. We've got algorithmically boosted tweets that soar across continents in seconds, a billion winged sandals woven from ones and zeros. Then there's the rise of the AI oracle. No trip to Delphi required, just a prompt whispered into ChatGPT's void. Like the Pythia perched above her fumes, large language models channel vast, unknowable data troves, spitting back prophecies in polished prose. Ask about your future, and it'll spin a plausible fortune from statistical echoes. Corporations now consult these neural nets for market forecasts. Governments pass their outputs for policy ideas, just as kings once bowed to cryptic scrolls from priestly intermediaries. The delivery method has upgraded from laurel leaves to latency stats, but the dynamic remains eerily familiar. Humans pleading with inscrutable forces for a scrap of clarity. Strange synchronicities flare up too, the kind that would have sent ancients scrambling for augurs. A musician drops an album, and hours later, a news story echoes its lyrics verbatim. Someone dreams of a long-lost friend, only for them to call the next morning. Reddit threads fill with strangers recounting identical premonitions. Jung called it the collective unconscious, a shared psychic layer where archetypes swim. Today, we might frame it as cosmic déjà vu glitches in the simulation, or proof that the old mythic web never really dissolved. Maybe it just upgraded its interface, trading oracle bones for push notifications. Even the gods have migrated platforms. Where Zeus once hurled lightning to punctuate his moods, Elon Musk tweets a poop emoji and tanks cryptocurrency markets. A TikTok influencer's offhand comment about Saturn retrograde sends millennials into existential spirals. Worship still happens, just not in temples. The devotion pours into live-streamed asthma rituals, manifesting grids on Pinterest, or the cultish fervor around Apple product drops. The sacred and the viral have blended, their boundaries porous as a shaman's drum trance. What does it mean? Perhaps we've rebuilt the mythic internet without realizing it, our tech scaffolding around the same ancient yearnings. The channels change, but the signal persists. A need to believe that the universe isn't just chaos, that patterns hide in the static, and if we listen closely enough, through fiber optic cables or feverish dreams, something might whisper back. From lightning bolts to whispering trees, the gods and spirits of myth didn't just communicate, they hacked reality itself, bending physics to their will with methods that still stagger the imagination. They turned wind into carrier waves, dreams into encrypted channels, and shadows into self-correcting networks long before humans dreamed of fiber optics or satellites. These weren't just metaphors for primitive minds, they were blueprints for cosmic connectivity, proving that necessity isn't just the mother of invention, it's the muse of divine engineering. Think about the sheer ingenuity. The Norse encoded entire prophecies into the grain of Yggdrasil's bark, a living blockchain where every knot and wall held data. The Oracle of Delphi transformed toxic vapors into a celestial API, passing Apollo's responses through the Pythia's trance like a biological mainframe. And the Polynesians, they didn't just navigate by stars. They treated the night sky as a dynamic Silai, inputting chants and receiving real-time course corrections from the constellations themselves. These systems didn't just transcend distance, they collapsed time, allowing messages to arrive before they were sent, thanks to those pesky Norns scheduling Destiny's delivery queue. But here's the real kicker. Every culture's mythic internet shared three uncanny traits. First, interactivity, whether it was Odin's ravens analyzing battlefield intel or Taoist priests negotiating with storm spirits. These networks demanded collaboration, not passive consumption. Second, biodegradability. Unlike our plastic-choked satellites, divine signals traveled through mediums that self-renewed: wind, water, the echoes of cliffs. And third, brutal consequences for misuse. Forget a dropped call, misinterpret a Maya star code, or mishandle a rune, and you risked empires falling. The stakes weren't just connectivity, they were survival. So what's your favorite divine app from Mythology's lost app store? The dream telepathy of Asclepius, the avian surveillance of Huginn and Muninn, or maybe the blood-soaked smoke signals of the Aztecs turning sacrifice into sacred bandwidth. Drop your pick in the comments, and if you're hungry for more deep dives into how ancient systems predicted or put to shame our modern tech, hit subscribe. Because the next time your Wi-Fi flickers, remember, the original outage was when humanity forgot how to listen to the whispers in the wind, the songs in the stones, and the stories still humming, silent but insistent, in the bones of the world.